9 flights around the world in business class for $220. Do I have your attention yet? The miles and points game is always changing. Airlines are constantly devaluing their programs or reducing their award availability. Today I'd like to talk about what I consider to be one of, if not the best redemptions around: ANA's Around the World ticket. ANA itself is a great airline, with a solid business class, excellent food, and Japanese hospitality that puts American carriers to shame. Their rewards program, however, is arguably even better. It's a transfer partner of American Express's membership rewards, though it sometimes takes several days to transfer points. You can fly round trip for most of the year in business class for 85,000 points to Japan. For comparison, American charges 120,000, United and Korean 140,000, and Aeroplan charges 75,000 one way. But even better than their award chart to Japan and Asia is their Around the World ticket. Although initially a bit obtuse, the rules are very generous, and there is incredible value to be had. I'll divide this video into 3 sections. First, the rules of the award. Second, tips on designing a route and things to watch out for. And third, I'll walk you through how I booked an award to visit China, New Zealand, Thailand, Italy, and the Czech Republic in business class for 145,000 miles and $220 in taxes and fees. Rules of the award. The chart is distance-based, where each segment or connecting flight counts. In addition, there are the following rules. ANA allows up to 8 stopovers, with 3 in Europe and 4 in Japan. In the case of open jaws or ground transfers, both ends count as a stopover. For example, in my case, I stop in Queenstown, New Zealand, and start again in Chiang Mai, Thailand. That counts as 2 stopovers. There is a limit of 12 segments, which includes connecting flights. This can pose a problem if you're not simply flying between Star Alliance hubs, or there isn't award availability to book a direct flight. In my instance, the direct flight from Chicago to Asia were all booked, so I flew to Toronto to fly Air Canada. Finally, the last requirement is that you fly either east or west and, quotes, do not backtrack, end quotes. There's a lot of incorrect information online about what this means. It only applies to regions as defined by ANA. And confusingly, while ANA divides the world into 10 regions for the purpose of regular awards, there are only 3 for around the world itineraries. In my case, I'm flying east to west. But I fly from Chicago to Toronto, backtracking, Shanghai to Auckland, backtracking, and Milan to Prague, backtracking, but because it's within the regions as defined by ANA, it's allowed. For example, I confirmed that I could fly from the US to New Zealand to Asia, or from the US to Asia to New Zealand, as both routings would be valid. You also don't have to start and end in the same city, or even the same country. You can start in Canada and end in Mexico. This can be helpful to tack on an extra flight that can be the springboard of your next trip. Finally, you don't get a discount for mixed cabin awards. I had to fly economy on 2 legs, but because I had at least 1 business class seat, the whole itinerary priced as such. What if you want to change or cancel? If you cancel and redeposit your miles, they only charge a fee of 3,000 miles. That's peanuts. In terms of changes, you have to keep the airline and route exactly the same. However, the dates can be changed at any time, even once travel has commenced. That's incredibly generous. That's basically it regarding the rules. Not that scary at the end of the day. Tips on designing a route and things to watch out for. I'll jump straight to the big one, fuel surcharges. These can be awful. You save up all these points for a free flight, and then you see you need to pay up to $1,000 on an award. Fuel surcharges, known as YQ, deserve their own video. For our purposes now, I'll divide the Star Alliance carriers into 3 groups. Best: Air New Zealand, Avianca, Copa, United, Air Canada, SAS, and Singapore. These airlines pass on no fuel surcharges. They are your best bet for long-haul flights where fuel surcharges can be quite high. Decent: ANA, Asiana, Egypt Air, Ethiopian, EVA, LOT, Thai, Turkish, and South African. These airlines do pass on fuel surcharges, and they could amount to a few $100s per leg in business class. The actual YQ will depend on the route. For example, I'm flying from Bangkok to Milan on Thai, but the fuel surcharge on this particular route is quite reasonable. The worst. Lufthansa, Swiss, TAP, Brussels, Austrian, and Air China. The bulk of the European carriers are always awful when it comes to fuel surcharges, passing on hundreds of dollars per leg. It's best to avoid if possible. Air China is rather hit or miss. Historically, they didn't pass on fuel surcharges, but at the time of this video, they passed on several $100s for a trans-Pacific flight. What this means is while you have many decent options flying to Asia, if you're looking to minimize fuel surcharges to and from Europe, you should look for United, Air Canada, and SAS, with LOT in a pinch. You can estimate your fuel surcharges by using ITA Matrix and looking for the YQ, but again, airlines like United and Air Canada won't pass them on to ANA, even if they're displayed. The next thing you need is award availability. Unfortunately, ANA's website only lets you look at round-trip tickets, so it's a hassle to check when trying to piece together an around-the-world ticket. Instead, I recommend United. It's pretty good at finding award seats, though they often come up with some very odd routings, and sometimes it won't be able to piece together an itinerary and you'll need to think segment by segment. For example, it didn't piece together Prague, Munich, Toronto, Chicago, or Chicago, Toronto, Shanghai, even though they were perfectly valid routings and seats were available. It also occasionally struggles with long layover options. Finally, regarding availability, special mention should be given to Singapore and Air New Zealand. For all intents and purposes, neither is a full member of Star Alliance when it comes to award bookings. Singapore blocks off all of its best business class and all of its first class offerings for its own program. It is not bookable through ANA or other partners. You'll be stuck in their regional business class product, which is in the process of being updated. Availability on Air New Zealand is truly awful. It's a bit of a running joke. I based my entire trip on finding availability. I only found one seat a couple of times a month to anywhere in Asia. The only reason I'm flying to Shanghai is because there's one available seat from there to Auckland and nowhere else. Believe me, I checked every single long-haul Air New Zealand flight. This is because Air New Zealand has a very unique frequent flyer program that is geared towards people upgrading to business class, so they really don't release much to partners. They in Singapore should really be called out for this behavior. Alright, how did I book my reward? Before booking, I made a list of what I really was looking for in this trip. 1. I wanted to visit Australia and New Zealand. 2. I wanted to fly on a brand new A350 somewhere. And 3. I wanted to minimize fuel surcharges. I started looking for award availability to Australia, from Japan, Taiwan, or China, but didn't find any. To New Zealand, I initially found a seat on United from San Francisco, but it disappeared. From China, there was plenty of Air China flights, but their business class doesn't look that great, and the fuel surcharges would have been potentially high. I found one seat on Air New Zealand, which has no fuel surcharges out of Shanghai. So I next needed to get to Shanghai. To get to Asia, there was no availability on United or ANA from Chicago, but there was on Asiana. In order to brainstorm how to include Air Canada, I looked at their routes from Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. It turns out there was availability on the Toronto-Shanghai flight, so I added Chicago-Toronto onto the end. I also wanted to go to the southern island of New Zealand, so I added on Auckland-Queenstown on Air New Zealand onto the end. Unfortunately, Star Alliance doesn't have great coverage to and within Australia. There are flights to the major cities and seasonal flights to Cairns, but nothing was available. So I ended phase 1 of my trip in Queenstown, New Zealand. Because I'm an American, I don't get much vacation, so I decided I'd turn this around-the-world ticket into 2 trips. I'd use other miles to fly back to the US and back to Asia again at a later date. The next leg of my journey starts in Thailand. Flights within Thailand are very inexpensive, so I decided not to waste mileage on them. Thai flies a variety of aircraft, but they do have A350s. I found availability to Milan of all places, so I booked Chiang Mai to Bangkok to Milan. I decided I want to go see Prague since I've never been, but there were no award flights in between that made sense. I'll let EasyJet fill in the blanks. Finally, it's hard to get back to North America from that part of Europe without using Lufthansa, Swiss, or Austrian. I was only seeing availability on LOT through Warsaw on United's site, but I was able to find segment-by-segment availability from Munich to Toronto on good old Air Canada. From there, I found a Prague-Munich flight that would just barely connect in time, as well as a flight from Toronto to Chicago. So the route is east to west, has 9 segments, and 5 stopovers. It's all legal by ANA's rules. On Great Circle Mapper, the total flying distance was 24,745 miles, which prices at 145,000 points in business class. Initially, I was thinking of adding a flight to Los Angeles at the end, as I have a wedding to attend there, but that would have bumped me up the next pricing tier, so I decided against it. Total cost: 145,000 American Express points, $215 in taxes and fees, including only $45 in fuel surcharges, and an additional non-waivable $25 telephone booking fee. For 4 long-haul business class legs and a few connecting flights. Not bad. Not bad at all. Thanks for watching. If you like this kind of how-to video, please let me know. I'll also be reviewing all these flights as I take them, so be sure to subscribe for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.